So yeah, very good to see different people from different states on the line. We've got a couple from Victoria, we've got one from Queensland, we've got one from Tasmania. I'll say hi to Jamie because I know you down there, Jamie. It's good to see you on the line. We've even got a couple of people from New South Wales. Sadly, no one from Western Australia can actually make it to our time slot because of the time difference. We're here in Melbourne, but I would like to say hi to those guys from Western Australia who I know are checking it out in a few hours' time once we put this recording of this webinar online. Before we get things moving, still got a few people sort of logging in as we go. On your screen at the moment, you are looking at the Chess Kids website, and one thing that is quite important at the moment is we've deleted all of our email addresses. So if you would like to receive information or updates from Chess Kids about webinars, about lessons, about tournaments that are coming up, about programs that we're running, you can find out about, like for example, this webinar was only promoted through this email list. So if you want to find out about those things, a lot of freebies that we do, get a newsletter that we produce every 2 months with tips and traps and puzzles and coaching articles. I would encourage you guys to jump onto the chesskids.com.au website and click one of those links or click that picture so that you can subscribe yourself or resubscribe your email address to our mailing list. Like I said, we've changed the mailing system that we're using, so all of the old email addresses have been deleted. We don't want to be sending people spam. We really want to make sure that that we're sending really relevant information to people who really want to receive what we're getting. So there'll be a few options where you can choose whether you're a student or a teacher once you're registering, and you can make sure that you get the information on email that is really relevant to you. So I do encourage you to subscribe to our mailing list there. It's obviously free and you can easily unsubscribe any time, and all the usual caveats that we will never share your email address with anyone else, so you're not going to get spammed by anyone else. All right, the lesson today is a game that that I played online. Now we do have a website, play.chesskids.com.au. You can see that from here on our homepage. That website is a spot where you can log in. It's free. You can play games against other people from all over Australia, other chess kids who are also looking for people to play games with. It's usually busy after school time, not that busy during the day, because I think some schools do have some trouble with their firewalls actually getting through and enabling that in a school. But certainly for after school and evenings, it's a great place to play online, and you can play against people of all different standards. So we've got beginners there, people who are just starting out how to play chess. They might have a rating of 300, 400, 500, and then all the way through up to international masters. Now, it's not often that you get to play against one of those international masters, but a lot of chess coaches or international masters do play on that site. And you just click on that link, play.chesskids.com.au, create yourself a free username and password, and you can log in and start playing some games. So the game that I'm going to be showing you today is a game that I played on this online site against an international master. Now, like I said, it's pretty rare to have an international master online, but I did get a chance to play against an international master, and we're going to have a look at this game right now. So I'll just let that load up onto your screen so we can see the chessboard now. And I'll just make sure, here we go. All right, we're going to have a look at this game. Now, I started off in this game with a queen's pawn opening, pawn to d4. Now, it doesn't really matter whether you do your king's pawn or queen's pawn opening on the first move, as long as you're aiming for the center of the board. Okay, so the 4 squares in the middle of the board, 1, 2, 3, 4, I'm just highlighting those green. Those are the most important, most powerful area of the board. If you can control the center of the board, from there you can attack left, right, straight ahead. You're much closer and easier to attack all of your opponent's pieces than if you were somewhere, hiding over on the edge of the board on the left or right hand side. Okay. The other thing about going towards the center of the board is it helps you to focus all your pieces together. So you end up with all of your knights, bishops, queens, pawns all working together in one area, focused in the middle of the board, rather than when you push your pawns up on the edges of the board, or you move your knights to the edge, you sort of end up getting your army split into two, half on one side, half on the other side. And it's much better to have your army all focused together, concentrating on the one area. So strategy number one, control the center of the board, and that's what I'm doing here, advancing forwards to the center of the board. Black plays the same move. I'm white, by the way, so I'm white in this game, and this international master is black. Now, I don't know the name of the international master because when you're playing games online, you can only see their username, not their real name. All right, so he's played pawn to d5, and I've played on my second move bishop to g5. Now, because this is a game online, we're playing quite quickly. So this game was 5 minutes each for the game, so the whole game's over in 10 minutes. Because it's quite quick, I like to set a few little traps as quickly as I can. So you can see by developing my bishop to g5 on this second move, I'm straight away setting up a little trap that if he moves his pawn forwards, bang, I've got his queen. All right, so I know it's a simple trap, but you never know when people are playing quickly. They might do a move without thinking at all. I've got a chance to at least maybe try and get his queen. Black plays a strong move, pawn to c5, and what that does is that gets two pawns next to each other, controlling the center of the board. And we've talked about this strategy before. When you've got two pawns next to each other like that, we call that a pawn wall, and that's your strongest attacking formation. All right, so a very strong formation there, a pawn wall. Now for me, I don't want to leave him with a pawn wall. I don't want to leave him with two pawns next to each other, controlling the center of the board. It's too strong, too powerful. So I play pawn takes pawn and get rid of it. Now it's interesting, you might think, well, hang on a second, didn't he just give you a pawn for nothing? Well, no, he does have a plan. Right? Black knows exactly what his next move is going to be. If you guys think you might know what Black's next move is going to be, type it into your chat boxes to give me an idea that you know what the next move is going to be. So Black's just looked like, just let me take a pawn for nothing, but of course there is a way that he can take that pawn back, not in one move, but in two moves. So if anyone got any suggestions as to what you might want to do for Black here to win back that pawn on c5. Okay, so any ideas at all? We've got a couple of suggestions. All right, the move that Black played in the game. Okay, good. We've got Sam who's made the right suggestion, the correct move. The move that you should be playing here, or that Black chose to play in the game, was queen to a5 check. Now, when you've put somebody in check and attacked a second piece at the same time, we call that a fork. So Black's got here a fork. Queen's attacking the king check and threatening the pawn at the same time. Now, I've only got one move. I can choose to save one of those pieces. Well, obviously the king, not the pawn. I'll save the king, and then that pawn can just get taken for nothing. So queen to a5 check, threatening the pawn and my king. I developed my knight to block the check, and it's a good move because it's getting another piece off the back row. So I now have two pieces developed off the back row and into the attack, right? The knight and the bishop. Black's only got the one piece. He's just got his queen, the only piece that's developed into the game so far. And when we're thinking about our three golden rules, the three strategies that we need to follow at the start of every game, number one, control the center of the board. That's what I did on my first move. Number two, get all my pieces off the back row and into the attack, and that's what I'm starting to do now. I've got my knight and my bishop off the back row. And number three, castling. Get my king safe, and of course I'm going to try and develop all my pieces as quickly as I can, all these pieces that are on the back row still. All right, those, I can highlight them red because they're actually still in bad positions. Once I get them off the back row, I'll be able to castle and get my king safe. All right, so three golden rules: control the center, develop your pieces, and then castling. So with knight c3, what my plan was that if he takes my pawn, queen takes pawn, I would have an opportunity to take his pawn in the middle of the board. If he takes my queen, I've got my knight protecting and backing up the queen. So I would end up winning a pawn for nothing, and I've got this nasty threat that next move I can move my knight in onto c7, and do a fork of my own, but this time not just winning a pawn that I've sacrificed, but going for a rook, 5 points. If I can get 5 points ahead, doesn't matter who I'm playing, 5 points ahead even against the world champion, I could win that game. So I just want to try and get a rook ahead, and then I've won for sure. Okay, so let's go back a few steps, back to where we were before. And black chose here to protect his pawn on d5, this pawn that I'm threatening here in the middle of the board. He chose to protect that rather than to take my pawn and let me take his pawn. So the move he does to protect it is pawn to e6. Right, it does pawn to e6 and sets up this pawn, protects pawn, protects pawn, 3 pawns in a diagonal line. We call that a pawn chain. All right, pawn protects pawn, protects pawn. So there's our pawn chain, a good strong defensive formation for black, keeping his pawns protected. All right, now here comes the exciting moves for me. I played pawn to e4. Now, what I'm trying to do here is I'm trying to keep attacking him in the center of the board. I've got 2 pieces off the back row. He's just got his queen. All right, so I don't want him to take that c-pawn just for nothing. I want to keep attacking him in the center of the board. And again, the same thing now is being threatened. If he takes my pawn, I get to take his pawn. He takes me, and then I've got a chance to win that pawn for nothing. Okay, so let's go back a few steps again. If you're in this position, if you're black, you'd be thinking, gee, how many pieces? There's 1, 2, 3 pieces attacking that pawn. Well, how much have I got defending it? I've got 1 piece defending it. Oops, there we go, 1 piece defending it with the pawn. And if the queen takes the pawn, then I'll have 2 pieces defending it. So you just simply count. And chess is really a pretty easy game because most of the time that's all you need to be able to do is just count. You need to count, oh yeah, there's 3 pieces attacking that pawn, 2 pieces protecting. Well, obviously 3 is better than 2, so I've got to do something to protect that pawn. Right, black actually came up with a good move. He can see a chance to take a pawn for free. Right, he does pawn takes pawn, and it's like, well, hang on a second. It looks like David's knight can take that back, but in actual fact it can't because black's queen is holding that knight in place with what we call a pin. That queen is pinning the knight. So then if the knight tries to move, it's going to be check, so I can't take that pawn. So I've lost a pawn for nothing. Now, do you think I was doing that deliberately? Do you think I had an idea? I did. I didn't want to give away a pawn for nothing. I want to give away a pawn because I've got a good idea about how I can try and do a checkmate. All right, so I do have a plan to try and get checkmate. The way that I think about this plan is I think to myself, gee, if I could put my queen down to the back row, that'd be checkmate. My bishop would be protecting, my bishop here would be protecting the queen. Right, the king's in check. He couldn't take me. He couldn't put a piece in the way to block, and he couldn't run away. Now, we've already had 2 people who've suggested the move that black can do on their chat, and that's pretty obvious. Black's queen can retreat and take my queen. So it's not a checkmate. But what I'm thinking to myself is I'm thinking, if I could go there and his queen wasn't there, then it would be a checkmate. And this is what you need to do in chess to try and set up tricks and tactics. You need to use your imagination to say, gee, what if that was like that? What if, gee, what is the perfect situation that I could imagine? And you imagine the perfect situation, and then you think, well, how do I do that? How do I get it there? And that's really simple. Right? Chess becomes easy then because you know what you're aiming for. You've got this plan in your mind. It's like, oh, I want to do that checkmate. All I have to do is get rid of this annoying black queen, and if that queen's gone, then I've got the checkmate. So that should give me a pretty good clue as to what my next move can be to try and get that queen out of the way and then do the checkmate. So my next move was pawn to b4. Now his queen's in danger. I'm threatening to take his queen. If his queen takes me, then he's fallen into my trap. My queen goes all the way down to the back row, protected by the bishop. There's the checkmate. Right? That's what I was planning. Right? Now his queen's not there. if only he would fall for my trap. But if we were playing against an international master, well, they're not going to fall for a simple trap like that. He's going to think, hang on a second, why would David give up a pawn for nothing? He's going to do queen takes pawn. Well, then it's going to be checkmate. No, not going to do that. I'm going to keep my queen somewhere where it can cover the d8 square. Now, there's really only one move that black can do here. His queen's in danger, so he has to save his queen. The only place he can go to keep himself safe is back to c7. Right, so he's retreated his queen back to c7, and now I can keep on going with my attack. I've got my queen, my bishop, my knight's in the attack as well. I've got 3 pieces into the attack. Eventually I want to try and get my other knight and bishop into the attack, but I'm going to give it one more go at getting that checkmate. Okay, let's see. How can I try and do the checkmate? Remember, my move is queen to d8. If I can get my queen down onto d8, it's going to be checkmate if black's queen's gone. If black's queen goes out of the way, then I can do my checkmate. So what move could I do to try and lure that queen out of the way again? All right, any suggestions that you've got, type them into the chat box so that I can see what you've suggested, and let's see if you come up with the right moves. So feel free to just type that into the chat box. Let me know what you think the next move would be for white. Okay, a couple of suggestions. The move that I played in the game was knight b5. So well done if that was the move that you suggested that I was going to play, because my knight comes up to attack his queen, right? Threatening his queen, and if he decides to move his queen out of the way, just comes one step forwards, there's my checkmate again. Queen all the way down to the back row, checkmate. Right? Again, he sees that coming after I do knight b5. He sees that coming, and he thinks of a move that he can play to still stop my checkmate. There's actually only one move that he can do again. Right? Just like before, I was threatening his queen. There was only one move he could do to keep his queen safe and stop the checkmate. Same thing here. Only one move he can do to keep his queen safe and prevent the checkmate, and that's to put his queen on d7. Not a great spot. Look at that. It's blocking his bishop. It's blocking his knight. Blocking in a lot of his own pieces there with queen to d7. Now I've got a bit of a plan here. I'm thinking always a couple of steps ahead, and I think, oh, hang on a second. This is a bit of a weak square here near his king. If I could get my knight in there, well, again, that's going to be maybe a fork on his king and his rook, or it could be even worse than that. So let's have a look. If I do queen takes queen, normally if you're attacking somebody, you don't want to trade off queen for queen because you need your queen to attack. But here I thought, well, hang on. If I get rid of his queen and he takes me back, let's say he takes with the bishop, which would be sort of a logical move, developing a piece off the back row, getting his bishop into the attack, threatening my knight, takes my queen. Then my next move, knight c7, oh, it's actually worse than just a fork. It's not just a fork. It's actually checkmate, because my bishop covers all the squares near his king. So his king, well, if you're in check, 3 things to do, 3 things to think about. Number 1, can you take the piece that's attacking you? Nope, you cannot take my knight. Number 2, can you block it off? Well, you can never block a knight. They jump. And number 3, can you run away? Well, you can't move his king to either of the yellow squares there because my bishop's covering it, and he's blocked himself off with all of his own pieces. So that would actually be a checkmate. So after queen takes queen, he's only got one move again that keeps him alive, and that's not to take me with the bishop, but to take me with the king. It's the only move that he can do. And, whoa, we know for sure that bringing your king into the attack is a bad idea. The strategy at the start of the game is to control the center, develop your pieces off the back row, leave your king on the back row to keep your king safe, and get all your other pieces off the back row. So he's now moving his king off the back row into the attack, which is sort of the opposite for what you want to do. All right, great move here for me. Can do 2 things in one go. I can keep my attack going, I can bring more pieces into the attack, but also I can get my king really safe just in case he ever gets a chance to attack me. So the best move for getting your king safe is castling. Now, when you're playing a game of chess, you can castle king side or queen side. This is what we call castling queen side, to the left-hand side of the board. Castling king side would be castling to the right-hand side of the board. Now, of course, I can't castle on the king side here because I haven't developed my knight and bishop yet, but I can castle queen side. Now, whether you're castling king side or queen side, the move is done exactly the same way. You take your king, move your king 1, 2 steps towards the rook. Then your rook jumps over and lands next to the king. So it always works the same way, castling kingside or queenside. King moves 2 steps, rook jumps over and lands next to the king. Now that can be done, kingside or queenside looks a little bit different at the end, but it is the same move. So that's my castling. Now you'll notice castling on the queenside gets my rook into an awesome position on an open file here, threatening his king. So there's a nice check. And he's, again, only got one move to keep himself alive. Because if he chooses to go back, now my rook can come down to the back row, checkmate. Right, he won't be able to take my rook, backed up by the bishop. Can't block, because I'm right next door to him. Can't run away. So that's the same checkmate idea as when I had when I was going to use my queen to go down to the back row, checkmate. So I've used my rook to do the attack. He can't go backwards, so the only choice he has is to come forwards. Oh my goodness, terrible, terrible. Bringing his king right out into the open. I'll keep the attack going. I'll play knight to d4 check. All right, by knight d4 check. Again, only one choice. He's got to bring his king out even more into the open. Right? If he goes back, he's going to get checkmated. If he goes forwards, well, we'll have to wait and see what happens. So he plays king d5. Now, remember the strategy. Get your pieces off the back row. Right? Black's left all of his pieces, his knights and his bishop, sitting on the back row doing nothing. They're not helping him at all. Right? He's put his king out in the open, which is nuts, to be honest. Crazy. You wouldn't want to put your king out in the open if you can help it. I guess he didn't really have much choice in this game. And I've got my knight, my bishop, my rook, 3 pieces. Let's make them green. 1, 2, 3 pieces in attacking positions. So I've got 3 good pieces coming towards his king. He's got all his good pieces on the back row. I've got to say, I reckon I'm in a winning position from here. Let's just see, how can I finish it off? How can I finish it off? All right, we've had a couple of questions before we can continue on, just about what would happen if the king had moved back instead. All right, so I'll just quickly show you, if the king had moved back instead of coming out into the open further, we do bishop here check. King goes back again. He can't come forwards because the pawn's covering the squares forward, so he's got to go back. Then we do the brilliant knight to c6, check with the knight, and check with the rook, a double check. When the king moves to e8, which is the only move, the rook comes down and there's a checkmate again. All right. So if he tried to go back, he's still going to get faced with the same problem. He's going to get checkmated. Okay, so let's go to where we were, and the king actually chose to move forwards. He thought maybe he could sort of come out this way and survive for a bit longer out in the open. Right, my next move was pawn to c4 check. Keep the attack going, keep threatening his king all the time. He moves king to e5, the only spot he can go to. And now I played my other pawn to f4. Now, when you're in check, there's 3 things to think about. Can you take the piece that's attacking you? Well, no, you can't take that because my bishop's protecting it. Can you put something in the way to block it off? Well, no, you can't put anything in the way to block it off because it's too close. And can you move the king? Can't move there because the pawn, there for the pawn, there for the bishop, there for the knight. So can't actually move his king to any empty square. So what happens? He can't take with the king, he can't block, he can't run away, but it's not checkmate. What move can black do here to get black out of checkmate? Right, and this is a tricky one. What can he do here to get out of checkmate? Right, king's in danger. He's in check. Doesn't look like he can take the pawn with the king. Can't block it off. He definitely can't move anywhere safe. So if you think you know what black can do, just let me know. Type it into the chat box. What can black do to escape from this, what looks like checkmate? All right, nobody's got it yet. If you try and take the pawn, it's protected by the bishop. If you try and take the knight, it's protected by the rook. There's only one thing you can do, and that is the special move en passant, where black's pawn can actually take white's pawn en passant, right, which means in passing. Pawn takes pawn is the move. Oh, whoa, how did that happen, people are saying? Okay, this is a special move that is pretty rare. Okay, it's called en passant, which is French, which means in passing. And in the olden days, pawns could only move one step forwards. So if a pawn moved one step forwards, black would have a chance to take that pawn. And there's a chance. He doesn't have to take it, but at least he's got a chance to take it before white's pawn then moves on forwards, and now they can't take each other. And when they first invented the rule that said pawns can go 2 steps forwards, right, people would start moving pawns 2 steps forwards just to avoid pawn takes pawn options. Now, if no pawns ever get taken in a game, it comes really blocked up and it's too hard to win. All right? All the pawns just block each other up and it's impossible to win, impossible to break through. So they said, well, hang on a second, this pawn moving 2 steps forwards, it's not its real move. The real move for a pawn is 1 step forwards. Right? It's only on the first move, when all of these pawns are on their home row, any of those pawns along the home row, they're the ones that could move 2 steps, just as the first move for each of those pawns. So if he's using it as a way of getting away from another pawn, they invented this rule called en passant, which says if you move 2 steps forwards and land next to a pawn, right, it only happens in this situation where someone moves 2 steps forwards and lands next to a pawn. Black can pretend you moved 1 and take him in passing. Okay, in passing. Right, let's go back again. And we just want to see this really, really carefully. En passant rule is a tricky one. Okay, it is a tricky one. When the pawn moves 2 steps forward, and lands next to another pawn, then that black pawn can capture en passant. It can pretend that the pawn that's moved 2 steps forwards only went 1, and you can do pawn takes pawn. All right. So it only happens in rare situations. Only happens with pawns. Right? If a bishop moves, or a knight moves, or a rook moves, or any other things move, en passant, there is no such thing as en passant for any other pieces. En passant only works pawn on pawn. And only when one player moves 2 steps forwards and lands next to an opponent's piece. Right? So there we go. There we've got en passant here, and black did the en passant move, which was very convenient in this game because it gets him out of what looks like checkmate. Right? White's next move, knight takes f3, developing another piece off the back row into the attack with a check. Right? King's in check, has to move his king out of danger, and the final move for white, bishop to d3, checkmate. And if we look at the end position, I think this is just great. I've got knights, bishops, rooks, almost every single one of my pieces in the attack, attacking towards black's king. Black's got all of his pieces, ugly, sitting on the back row doing nothing. Right? Every single one of black's pieces is on the back row doing nothing. Right? Whereas all of my pieces are attacking in the middle of the board. So if we just think about just the very simple 3 golden rules, control the center of the board, well, I've got some of my pieces in the center, that's good, I'm pointing towards the middle. Develop your pieces, I've got all my pieces into the attack, and of course castling, I got my king nice and safe. And black suffered in that game because he moved his king out into the open instead of getting all his pieces off the back row. And I think it all stemmed from the fact that he brought his queen out really early. Yeah, he was trying to get a check and then win my pawn, but his queen was out early. I attacked his queen a few times and he wasted a bit too much time retreating his queen, and then all of a sudden there was no choice. He was threatened with checkmate, he had to bring his king out into the open, and then his king just got further and further and further out into the open and ended up with a checkmate. All right, so nice checkmate in the end. I am going to stick around here for a few more minutes. I'll be here for another 5 minutes or so. If there are any questions that people would like to ask, feel free to type them into your chat box. Let me know any feedback, questions, comments. If there's any specific lessons that you guys would like to work on, if there's a particular area of the game, an opening, an end game, something that you guys really need in your chess club at school there, please let me know. You can send me an email or you can type in the chat right now. and we'll try and tailor some of these lessons to exactly what it is that your guys in your chess club need to do. So good luck with your games today. Have a think about those golden rules, see if you can get all those pieces into the attack and copy some of those strategies that I did in this game. And of course, when you get home this evening, check out the Chess Kids online, where you can play games online, and certainly also try and sign up to our newsletter. If you haven't yet done that, you can jump onto the chesskids.com.au website and click on one of these links here and sign up for our newsletters, so that you find out more about webinars, coaching tips, newsletters, all those sorts of things. So thanks very much everyone for being part of it today, and we look forward to seeing you next week.